I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Emmy winner Ben Mendelsohn. Ben, when you took on this role, you finished it, and then you've put it. It's in the books. Your version of Christian Dior. He says at the end of this series that creation was survival. What did that mean to you?
To me, well, I think what he's saying there is when he was getting through World War II and trying to negotiate all of the horrors that he went through, that his only way to sort of be able to look, in this tunnel and try and see a speck of light was to create. And I think a lot of us do that in whatever way we do. But, that's what I think he was talking about. For me, mate, if I don't have something that I can sort of think about and work on, I'm shot dark, Yeah, I sort of have, it is survival in a way,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think to me, that's a real through line in this whole series is about, they were living through the horrors, the trauma, and they were trying to create something beautiful. And that really resonated with me. And then from the outset, when you were working on, like, I guess, how to approach this particular characterization of Christian Dior, how important was it for you to portray him as this anxious, self-doubting, self-loathing guy? Because that's not who I expected to see when thinking about Dior.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the first thing to say about portrayal and whatnot is you're responding first and foremost to the writing, like you're responding to the way it's written. And I've only seen him and watched him, in little snippets, and one of them is an interview, and he talks about his anxiety in that, and it's in specific terms. But I just got the feeling very strongly when he starts getting asked certain questions by this guy that he's being made uncomfortable, and that I guess it's that, and I guess it's the way we were dealing with the situation, because his sister is kidnapped by the Nazis, not kidnapped, sorry, taken.
Yeah.
She camp, and like he's a gentle person, and yeah, I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense actually, because we've got Coco Chanel played by Juliette Binoche, and she's really acerbic and witty and kind of a bit more harsh. And so
strong back, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
strong sense,
really strong center. Whereas Dior maybe was a bit more malleable depending on what was going on in his life. And I like that dichotomy. And you and Juliette didn't really get to do a lot together, obviously, but what did you make of that rivalry between the two titans of the industry back in the day?
I thought it was a really interesting kind of contrast between the two of them. I think that Coco is an absolutely, just such a remarkable person. And, there's not really a rivalry until he hits it, because he's nowhere. He's nowhere. I know he's tried his hand at a couple of things, but he hasn't had a lot of, nothing sort of stuck. And then there's that sweet spot, that moment comes, and then it's on. And then I think from his point of view, there is no rival. She's gone. She's over, Like, I think that's how he imagined. And he was an assistant to her on a couple of occasions. And she, yeah, mate, he copped a wallop off her.
Love it.
He copped it. He copped it.
Yeah, he did cop it.
But she's a free, it's funny because Juliette in real life is closer to Cricri, and I've got a closer kind of temperament to the Coco thing, erratic, pull things together at the last moment, whatnot, sort of a wall, and you can't, don't want you to see nothing, all that sort of stuff. And she's really studious and so intelligent, poised, awesome, just awesome.
Isn't that interesting how and you're playing kind of opposites in the show. And don't you think that it's really interesting that Dior and even Chanel, they both came from nothing. and they both work their asses off to get to a point where they're now regarded as icons. And most of us have been through something like that. When you're successful, it doesn't just happen like that. You have to work really damn hard, and you have to fail. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do. I'll just add a short caveat. Dior's came from a family that was actually quite wealthy, but was in steep decline. So just so we're on that. What I think about like coming from nothing and you know, success and all that kind of stuff. I live in a joint now. I drove past here, you know, this street, and I used to pray, just, you know, give me a career here, like for 20 years, right? And then it basically was over, right? And it ran its course. And then something happened, and snap, off it goes. I think the thing about finding success is people change, you know, people's ad. Like, I had it when I was a tacker, like when I was about 18, 19, you know, boom, there, then there. And that's when you know. That's when you know, because the way people treat you is vastly different. And the other thing I think to say about success is the challenges don't change. Like the challenges, you know, the challenges don't change in work and stuff like that. But the way people regard you, treat you, and whatnot is very different, and it's very different in Oz to the States. That's a very different thing. They're a bit more sus in Oz, you know. They want to check it out, you know. They want to check it out because anyway, it's very important if you're an Australian not to make other people feel like belittled. That's a cardinal.
No, you're done. You'd be completely utterly written off.
You are gone. Like, and that's a great thing about our culture. It can also be a really kind of, you know, it can have an attitude that's a little bit antagonistic towards you know, towards trying to achieve, you know.
Yes.
And I heard this great quote once that, you know, ideas are delicate. They're like little baby butterflies, and they're very easily killed when they're popping out. And the atmosphere around that is really important. So that's something for us to just think on as a culture, like, you know, like, because we've got opinions like instant, and please.
Yeah, it's so true. It is so damn true. So if we think back to what you said a bit earlier about watching Dior's interviews and whatever, when you're playing a real person, even though a lot of us don't really know everything about him, but is there an inherent pressure to be authentic and accurate, or can you interpret him the way you want to interpret him alongside with Todd's writing and so on and so forth?
I think it's a mix, you know. I think it really is a mix. I mean, look, you know, like if you think back into Eric Bana, when Eric did Chopper, right? That's a really, you know, that feels like the Chopper. If you were around that, I mean, there's a sound, there's a this, there's a that, and you can sort of transpose it fairly easily, right?
Yeah.
I played Murdoch way back when, and I've played King, I think it's George Elizabeth's dad. So there is a pressure, but I think, to me, trying to capture what the soul is or whatnot is probably, you know, probably the more important. But it's if it's going to throw the audience out, if they know someone really well, and you just come in and go, "Hey, mate, how you doing?" No, I'm playing him, but I'm playing him the way I could play him. You know what I mean? It's a certain kind of contractual mix, and you don't even know. You know, you don't know. I mean, Gary Oldman's Winston Churchill, when he said something very interesting. When he got really close to real Churchill, like it kind of started to not work. So he needed a little dash of Gaza in there to really make it feel like, oh. And what I take that to mean is the very little rhythms in people and the very specific things. It's like your facial gestures, all that. The holy grail would be that you could do something about any of that stuff. But the practical reality is you can't. You can't do something about the pathways of that stuff with delicate, intimate material. You just can't. So then you lean towards what I think, you're trying to give the audience the best you can, but not take them out of the experience.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of weird, but anyway.
No, it makes total sense. We want to believe, we want to suspend disbelief, that's probably the best way to put it, and really go along with the story, right? It's all about the story. You're trying to support the vision. And if you're if you're doing silly things to try to mimic, we're done. We're not interested. So that's why I think I really love the way that you towed that line in the new look, because it's not like you're mimicking Dior at all. Not that I would even know, but I found it really believable. And it brings me to this. A lot of it has to do with the writing, but also your interactions with the cast. And so, for example, in the finale, when Catherine Dior, played by Maisie Williams, comes in and they embrace and she says, it's time to show the world what you've created. I loved that moment. I loved it how your whole demeanor seems to change. It's like this weight has lifted off when Catherine's back in his life. And it made me rethink, what was that working relationship like between you and Maisie? Because it would have been pretty strong to kind of create that very believable moment.
I think the thing about Maisie and I suppose myself is we just let each other love each other. There's a real thing. I mean, like you can take enormous weight off stuff if you just sort of say, all right, I love you, and you're going to let yourself be loved by that person, and then you just feel a lightness. The other person that I found really great and in that same way was David Cameron, who plays Jacques, right?
Yeah.
Because we'd been making out and doing this, and and it's sort of, and like it's like acting is sort of a bit scary and a little bit like, oh, that anyway. But then when you got to pash and you got to sort of do all that. But Davey was awesome, right? Davey was awesome because he was just very comfortable with this and that and the other. And so we just go for it. And,
wow,
but Maisie wasn't even being thought about for any of this. Adam didn't know who she was. I did, mate. I was batshit about her. Once you get into God, you just
she's so good in that.
It was all about, for me, the Hound and
Aria.
It was the one that's killed me, the whole identity thing, the big sort of grumpy but benign protector. Anyway, but she came from nowhere in the casting process, absolutely nowhere. He had no clue about it. She wasn't being looked at, and then all of a sudden she's there, and we did one of these, and she was so intelligent, so committed, so humble, because you find that in certain kind of regions and whatnot. Completely humble, but really smart, really committed. And it was just the interview, and it was like, it's on. And ever since that, that's what it is. It's if you want to work and you love the idea of what you're doing and you're happy where things are going, you'll give it all. Give it all. But if you're not, if there's stuff getting in the way, if it's like, you can't really give it as much. And sometimes it's really better to have performers that feel like they can just give it all.
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah, no. But that's pretty much true of any profession, really. But when you're performing, you're acting, have you had many experiences in the past, without mentioning names, where you haven't really been able to let your guard down, and so then it affects your...
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them, and it happens early. Really? It happens early. Look, I can be... if I'm a bit anxious and whatnot, I can be a bit sort of like blur and sort of blow the room out a little bit, right? And that people can take that as offensive, right? They think it's sort of like, well, so yeah, I get a lot of times, like there's a lot of times with a lot of people where the guard is up, and that's it. And you sort of just got to give people jail or whatnot until it's over, And what tends to happen is once you give someone jail, they'll come back. They'll come back.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of connection, you've told the story about you and Todd Creator, and how you're making pizza, and he told you about this
right there,
show.
right there, mate.
Right there.
That wall.
And like just the thought of pizza with Ben and Todd actually sounds really delightful. So that's a whole other conversation. But what is it about him? Obviously, you connected over Bloodline, one of your best roles. What is it
Yeah,
about him that you most value when you're working together?
mate. I mean, you know, the best thing about the way he approaches stuff is he says, I'm just curious. He comes at it from a sort of a place of curiosity, right? Like, which is a fantastic, best way to create. And I think he's curious as to what you might do with this scenario or character. He has a curiosity about it. You know, he's one of those people. I can take Todd to meet any person in any of the various diverse kind of, you know, he can anywhere. He's a really unassuming, comfortable person, and he has a really good sense of scenarios and this and that and the other. And because we'd smashed it with Bloodline, mate, I was up for. I mean, like, you know, Christian Dior, like, not, you know, who's going to think of, you know, when you get someone like that in your life, you know, you thank the lucky stars, you know.
Yeah.
You know, that can think of you and see you outside of the you know, the current milieu or whatnot.
Yeah.
Always great.
Yeah. Because this is a bit of a departure for him and for you. It's not something that I was expecting to see you in. And also it's because like I wasn't really that familiar with the whole haute couture fashion thing.
Who
Like,
is? Like, who is?
yeah, are
Like,
you
you know what I
into
mean?
it now? Like, do you know, do you
No,
have
no, no,
appreciation for it?
no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But what I would say, like, one of the things is guys can have a hard time sometimes accessing this. And I think here's the great mistake as a guy. If you want to see how, like, how success and how game is played and all of this, there's all these fucking cliches that we have had downloaded from a whole period of time. But some of the most successful, brilliant, impactful people aren't, yeah, they are finding their way through gaps. They are plugging away. They've got a little eye up every now and then. And you know what? When it's in reach, it's bang, and they grab it and they give it a go. So it's a really good take. And that's the thing. He's a hero, but he's not the hero that we are that we are super familiar with. And I wanted to highlight some of the other things because to point out that having difficult emotions is no barrier to having heroic achievement.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much bullshit in the you know, in our cultures and stuff about feeling state and this state and the other state. Now, I'm fortunate. I'm an actor, right? So I go to work and I work with my feelings, you know, as it were. But I still think it is, you know, we place so much emphasis on all of that stuff, and I think it's, I think it's a misunderstanding of how things actually seem to work.
Yeah. I have one final question. It's very important to us because at Gold Derby, we follow the awards. That's what we do. When you won
Roger
the
that.
Emmy,
Oh,
you
right,
won the
right.
Emmy,
Yeah, I'm
right?
right about all that. Okay, yeah, beauty.
Yeah. You won the Emmy. You weren't there because you're on Ready Player One in London, right? So Taraji P. Henson gets up and she accepts it on your behalf and she says she's going to keep it at her home for you, Ben, when you get back. Now, all these years I've imagined a scenario where you've had to organize a quick drive-by to bloody Brentwood or wherever she lives to pick up the Emmy. Now, that didn't happen, did it?
Look, I think it's much more satisfying, and it doesn't do Taraji justice to, you know, to reduce it the how I got the Emmy into a small telling. So I'm really glad it's the last question. But what I would say is, yeah, she's an awesome talent, and she was so awesome in Empire, and she, you know, and I just wish I could watch Taraji more and more and more, because she is, again, one of those people that you just go, oh, and then it's like, where's, you know, hey, like where, like should be everywhere, giants.
Yeah.
And sometimes people that, for whatever reason, this and that and the other, but it's like, more please. That's all I want to say about it, is more please. Please, more.
Please. And look, I think without being too cliche, the Academy said more please. You got 3 nominations for Bloodline. They obviously liked it, what you did, and you got an Emmy to show for it. And so you will always be known as Emmy winner Ben Mendelsohn.
I know, it's like, look, awards and whatnot are all great. My old man's got a Nobel, so whatever.
Exactly.
But, it's all good. It's wonderful. It's a really lovely,
It's a pat on the back. It's people saying, you know what?
Look, it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing. But the shit thing is 3 people have to go, I
know. And you've been there too.
I mean?
You've been there too.
Oh, mate, I've been there. I've spent most of my time there. But it's still a great thing to be, it's a great thing to be regarded as, as appreciated, as kicking goals, okay,
Yeah, kicking goals is always a good thing. I hope we get to see you on the red carpet, perhaps maybe for a new look. We'll just have to wait and see. In the meantime, mate, congratulations on some really, really awesome work in the new look. I appreciate your time.
It's lovely to talk to you, mate. Thank you so much.